You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of life.
Welcome to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes of the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. My awesome guest today is Dr. Jaffe, and he is the founder of IGNTD, a learning experience and transformation company, and a nationally recognized expert on mental health, addiction, and stigma. He lectures in the psych department at UCLA and was the executive director and co-founder of one of the most progressive mental health treatment facilities in the country. His work and research focuses on changing the way Americans think about and deal with mental health issues, including the processes of addiction and change. He's passionate about addressing the role of shame in destroying lives and aims to greatly reduce the stigma of mental health in this country. He now directs IGNTD and the recovery programs and writes for Psychology Today and other publications. He also has been on TED Talks and some other journals and publications and appeared on numerous television shows and documentaries discussing addiction, therapy, and related social issues. Welcome, Dr. Jaffe. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's get started. You're a little controversial, which is what I like. Tell me what you're doing now. What's the newest thing you have going on?
Sure. So first of all, just to it's kind of like an inside club that we can let all your listeners in on immediately. That's Ignited. So IGNTD is Ignited. We just took out some vowels to make it a little bit, more specific to our participant. But the name of the program is Ignited. Ignited Recovery is a piece of that addresses addiction. And definitely controversial. I would say probably for the entire 8 years that I've been involved with work clinically, I've been controversial. So it's not new to me, but as things pick up steam, it seems to be more of a problem. The last 24 hours, I've gotten about 4 or 5 different messages on Facebook with people calling me names and putting down everything that I do, which I'm just kind of getting used to.
Welcome to my world.
Well, I got to say, though, for anybody who's listening, the reason I don't really care and I'm going to keep going is we are losing more and more people every year to addiction. Only about 10% of people who have a problem go get help. And year after year, for decades now, we have been losing more and more people to overdoses and addiction. And so whoever wants to say whatever it is from traditional treatment, what we're doing right now isn't working. Period, point blank. If it were working, we wouldn't be in this situation. The fact that I have to catch a little flack for suggesting new ways, alternative, new controversial ways of doing this is fine, because I've already worked with people and helped save their life from the struggles that they were having in the moment. And if all it takes in the meantime is for me to catch a little flack, that's fine.
I completely agree with you. So let's talk about some of these new ways, because we both agree treatment's not working the way it is right now. So what are you proposing, or what have you suggested to change the model to make things different so that we do see a higher success rate?
Perfect. So obviously one of the first ones is, from my standpoint, is there's not a single way to recovery. And we need to get out of this notion that if people don't follow a prescribed singular model of how to get better from addiction, then they're somehow resistant or in denial or unmotivated to get help. That's just bullshit, and it's just not true. And we need to stop talking about it that way. What we need instead is to actually offer people what they're asking for, which are a multitude of ways to get better from this problem. Every single addict, every single person that I ever meet who is struggling with this wants to get better. The fact that they don't want to get better using the methods everybody else is offering them, to me, is not an indication that they're not serious about wanting to get help. That's the first thing. And we need to change our language in an industry. We need to change our language in the treatment, in the treatment complex, if we'll call it that. And that moves everything from therapists, psychologists, coaches, et cetera, all the way up to the rehab centers and the physician. So that's step number one. And this is the thing that makes people believe that I'm super controversial, think that one of the things we need to eliminate from that conversation is that abstinence is the only route to recovery. People have told us, so I did a research study, the thing that actually made me leave academia and go into helping people on the ground is I did a research study looking at why don't people go to treatment. It really baffled me that only 10% of people with addiction problems go get professional help in specialty situations for it, because if you look at things like diabetes, cancer, and other chronic, ongoing, serious conditions, those rates are like 70 to 90%. And literally, just so listeners understand what I'm talking about, from a person who gets diagnosed with a problem, what percentage of people go and get at least a single first course of treatment? So those rates are so low for addiction that, I couldn't really wrap my head around why that was. So I started doing a lot of research on the topic, and 50% of the participants in a study that I conducted at UCLA told us that not wanting to quit or enjoying drinking or using too much to stop was a primary barrier for them to get in. Everybody else that I talked to said, well, those people are not motivated. I had a completely different way of looking at it. And so I started really looking seriously at what non-abstinence treatment would look like. And that opened me up to the entire harm reduction world, to names like Andrew Tatarsky and Stanton Peele and Alan Marlatt, who's past tense, and all these people who have been doing this sort of work for decades, but in the shadows. I never heard of them at the UCLA studying addiction. And what I decided was that was the treatment center that I ran for 5 years, and I co-founded that with Mark Kern, another clinician. And the work that I do now continues in the same vein of letting people enter treatment at whatever level they're comfortable doing and helping them with whatever their presenting problems are, understanding that if we help them where they're at, if we really help them with the problems that they want help with, they're not going to be resistant to treatment. They're going to engage and they're going to get help immediately instead of having to delay it until they hit the quote unquote rock bottom.
Okay, so let's just pause there. I completely agree with you 100%. I specialize in exactly what you do, which is harm reduction. I get the clients that say, I've been to treatment 5 times and it doesn't work. But we don't ever say that. We say the person wasn't ready for treatment. So I've always said that treatment centers aren't ready for our clients because they're only giving them one way of thinking, which is total abstinence, which isn't correct for everybody. So let me ask you this question. Do you believe in controlled drinking or controlled use?
So at Alternatives, we had a moderation program to help people with, who look to reduce their drinking and try to help them learn how to keep it within specific bounds, non-harmful, non-consequence related, healthy drinking bounds. So yeah, I absolutely believe in it. a lot of the work that I do now doesn't have that high level of hand-holding for almost anybody. I do a lot of my work remotely with people who don't come to my office or don't do very heavy-duty individual work with me, although that's available. And so, yes, I believe in it. It can take some work for a lot of people to get to it, and it can take some training, but I've seen it work. Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Now, I noticed you're also doing something else, and that was to talk about the stigma of being labeled. And I find that very interesting because the one thing I've seen in the treatment centers is that a person comes in using heroin and they come out with 15 different prescriptions with 15 different things, and they're bipolar and they're borderline and they're this and they're that. Tell me about the labels that we use for people today.
Sure. So, I mean, let's just start with the obvious one, right? I don't know how old you are, but I remember the commercials back in the day, the Just So No campaigns and the, girl dancing in a room and that voiceover. Nobody says I want to be a drug addict when I grow up. That's true. But not only does nobody say I want to be a drug addict when I grow up, when somebody recognizes that they have addiction issues, they resist heavily being called an addict and identifying as an addict. And unfortunately, in almost all instances, and what we do right now, that is almost like a prerequisite for getting the help. I mean, I can speak from my own personal experience where within 15, 20 minutes of my first treatment center experience, I was standing in the middle of the circle and that got indoctrinated into you're here because you're an addict and you will always be an addict. People resist that greatly. And just like I was saying before, we live now in a system where all the things that people resist are the things we've somehow been taught and believe we have to make them agree to before they can get help. And so, if people resist the title, let's just let them not use it. Why, some people are really proud of it, by the way, and let them enjoy it all they want. I'm saying for the people who are resistant to it, why are we so adamant about making them get up over and over and over in front of other people in meetings and identify as an addict? I just don't understand that piece. The second piece has to do more with the mental health component that you mentioned. And that's hugely important because I've seen individual patients, clients that have come to me, as you said, loaded up with all these, prescriptions are one thing, but all these long-term chronic mental health conditions, borderline personality disorder, bipolar, generalized anxiety disorder, etc. And I got to tell you, not always, but sometimes those diagnoses, especially when the client is young, like in their mid-20s or late 20s, turn out to just be wrong. They just turn out to have been either drug-induced itself or environmental plus psychological plus biological sort of interaction that existed in the person's life for a limited time period. And the problem is that, again, these labels are lifelong, right? When you tell somebody they have borderline personality disorder, that's something they're supposed to carry forever. But if you work in the field for a while, you actually see a lot of people, especially, again, if they're diagnosed earlier, who don't meet criteria for that later on in life. And so I'm really big on the notion that we have to get back to the individual-centric way of doing this work. And we have to be able to handhold rather than categorize, group, and, push away into buckets the people who come to us, because people who struggle with addiction are having issues in their life. They're having struggles with their relationships. They're having struggles with their biological dysregulation. They're having struggles with their mentality and their mindset and the way they see the world and the lenses through which they interpret the interactions they have with people day in and day out. And it seems to me like there are so many barriers and so many hurdles that we put up in the name of helping them that actually end up hurting them in the long run.
I agree with that. And one of the things I saw that drove me crazy was because insurance doesn't pre-cert certain pieces of addiction, the admissions team, which is not clinical, reads off this list of things and asks somebody, are you this, and this, and they're in detox and they meet criteria for bipolar because they're detoxing, which is similar to criteria for bipolar. Next thing you know, they say, oh, you're bipolar to get the insurance to pre-cert. Person goes through treatment. Right. When they hit clinical goes, okay, they're diagnosed bipolar without actually even investigating anything. And then the client walks out of treatment and goes, oh, the reason I'm using drugs is I'm bipolar. No, you're detoxing. You're mimicking bipolar. We shouldn't even be diagnosing you for 6 months till you're clean. So I see so much of that. So I like the work that you're doing with the no shame, no stigma, no labels, which is awesome. Now,
Yeah.
are you getting pushback from the AANA community in a sense that you're going outside their box?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even call it pushback, right? They're calling me all sorts of names. I mean, I know you've been called the same sorts of things, but they're calling me everything from a con artist to money hungry. If anybody literally understood how much money I make off of this thing, the whole money hungry con artist thing would just be laughable. If I'm a con artist, I'm doing a terrible job of making money off of people. I've been working at this for 10 years now, and I would have made a shit ton more money if I just got a freaking corporate job somewhere. It's just ridiculous that people accuse me of that. But here's the problem is they see things one way. They see it their way and no other way. And I also understand it a little bit because it's helped them. But again, like I said right at the beginning, the problem is clear. There are about 90% of people who struggle with this who won't get help. Like I mentioned, a huge number of them is telling us that part of the reason they won't get help is because of the barriers that have been put up, the logistics of treatment, right? You got to go away for 30, 60, 90 days. You got to pay a lot of money. You got to have 10 to 15 hours a week available to treatment, and you have to quit ahead of time. Those are logistical and situational sort of barriers that we have put up as a treatment system. And we can keep blaming them, and we can keep calling addicts names and tell them that their brains are so damaged they can't make decisions, et cetera. And we can tell them that because of their disease, which is doing push-ups in the background, whatever the fuck that means, that, they are so damaged they cannot listen to anybody else. But I'm telling you, and to everybody who's listening right now, I've now seen hundreds and hundreds of people. And when you shift the conversation and just say, hey, obviously you don't want to live this way. What's going on? Tell me what we can help you with. You lose essentially all resistance to treatment, and people come to your side and start engaging in the helping process, and then they get better. Do they get perfect? No, but that's not news to anybody listening right now. Is nobody is perfect. And the notion that that's the standard we have to hold everybody up to is ridiculous. I have a book coming out called The Abstinence Myth. If anybody wants to go to theabstinenceMyth.com, you can get the first chapter downloaded right now for free. And in it, I show a lot of evidence that explains why the models we currently use are failing us, and they are killing people in the process. We have to stop. We have to find a new way of doing this.
That's awesome. We'll put the link up for that with the podcast so anybody can go to there and also download it. And then we'll put that up for you on theaddictionsacademy.com and make that required reading of our new coaches. Because one of the things I teach in all the coaching is non-abstinence. So the coaches get both. They get harm reduction and abstinence-based thought process. So that'll be a great required reading for all of them because there really isn't a whole lot out there that's progressive and new when it comes to this method. There isn't.
And it's scary because a lot of people don't want to catch the sort of shit that I'm catching. And I'm sure, like you said, that you are catching for offering a different solution. But to me, as I mentioned already, it's just ridiculous how badly we're losing this war while everybody keeps fighting about, can we use this new manual or should it be this other manual? Which approach should we do? Or is this medication going to be the one that fixes addiction forever? It's the systematic problem. I mean, there are a lot of problems in our society in general that are driving the addiction problem, but these are not sort of what I've come to call kind of like, it's not a tightening the bolts or a polishing of the mantle problem that we have, right? Like slight changes in specific manuals are not going to be the thing that makes a difference here when 90% of people are not even tasting the medicine. So we do have to have a wholesale change in how we approach this.
I agree. Now, what's your opinion on medically assisted therapy? So the MAT sector, the Suboxones, the Vivitrol, the naltrexones. What do you think about those in lieu of the drugs?
The funny thing is, my answer to this will be my answer to almost anything else you give me probably, which is I think medication-assisted treatment is a wonderful tool for some people. I don't think it solves the addiction problem, but it can help give people relief in a way that helps them do the work that they actually need to do. So I've had a lot of clients who have had really good success with naltrexone in terms of reducing their cravings or reducing the amount of drinking that they engage in. Does that fix the reason for why they're drinking? No, it does not. And so, it's got to be a wholesale approach. We can't start pretending that any one of these things by itself will fix it. But I also don't really get the argument of, well, methadone or Suboxone or just replacing one addiction for another. I've met people who were homeless heroin injectors, then got on methadone or got on Suboxone, and now live in an apartment, have a job, and are maintaining normal relationships. To me, that's a victory.
I agree. So it's so convoluted. We have all these different schools of thought out there. It's either totally abstinence, and then you've got those people arguing that MAT, that's not abstinence. And then you've got people arguing all these things. And instead of getting out of our own way and just letting each person recover in their own way, in their own methods, we're trying to come up with one solution that fits everybody. And
I have an entire chapter dedicated in my book exactly to this point. We need to stop this ridiculous fight for what is the most important thing in addiction. Who cares, right? I mean, why are we spending so much of our time arguing about, is it mostly genetic or is it mostly environmental? Is it mostly psychological or is it mostly spiritual? There are people that have different components of this. Some people have a huge biological risk, right? Their genetics are loaded up for sensitivity to alcohol. What I mean by that is, being hyper kind of sensitive to its response, and so they get a lot out of it. And they also have a lot of impulsivity and risk-taking built into their genes, and all these things that load up the likelihood that they will develop a substance use problem. And they also have huge environmental risks, but they're actually really connected to their spirituality, and their psychology is relatively intact. Those clients need to be dealt with and addressed differently than a client with the exact opposite presentation. But what we've done, because we use the label addict for all of them, we kind of just assume they're all going to be the same, and they're not, and we're seeing the results of it, and we just have to stop.
I agree. And I think the other problem we're having too is we're judging how people got from point A to point B. So, for example, I didn't do well in I went to OA and I went to NA. I did horribly because in my mind, they're giving you caffeine, they're giving you sugar, and they're smoking cigarettes. Those three are drugs. So you're telling me I can't have diet pills, but I can have all the sugar I want. That to me, that was ludicrous. So I didn't go back.
Yeah.
And I got sober in a yoga mat, and that worked for me. So when I'm teaching my clients, I'm always, you have to go see what works for you. Not everything works for everybody. So as a society, we've gotten so judgmental that if you don't do what I did, you're never going to recover. And I don't know how we got there, but that is like,
I know how we got there.
Tell us how we got there.
Well, we got there because we're a puritanical, judgmental society. And if you're not perfect and you're not the smartest, best looking, hardest working human being in the room, then we judge you, period. Like from the time you're in third grade. And we've gradually gotten worse and worse about this. And we've gotten bigger and bigger about the stressors we put in our environment. And at the same time, completely eliminated, reduced, and cut back on any resources to help people. You mentioned yoga as this thing that helps you. Yoga helps improve GABA activity in the brain. It helps people relax, connect to their breath. It's a spiritual practice in some ways, but it's for sure helps with exercise and your cardiovascular health and everything that's involved in that. But we've eliminated that idea. I mean, we're moving back towards it this decade. But as a society, we've eliminated that pursuit, the pursuit of self-care, relaxation, connection, etc. And unless we turn the corner on that, and I do actually believe that we have been over the last 5 to 10 years, but unless we turn the corner on that, the problem's going to get worse. And it doesn't matter what pill, what vaccine, what manualized cognitive behavioral therapy or DBT approach you put in place, it's not going to end up helping because the milieu, the environment that we're putting people in is toxic. And then we throw them into another toxic environment for the quote unquote help.
Right. And that's spot on. So what takeaways could you leave our audience with if they're struggling with an addiction and they don't want traditional treatment or traditional abstinence-based treatment hasn't worked or isn't working? What are some things they can do?
Okay, perfect. So the first thing that I want everybody to understand is there are a multitude, almost an endless way to recover, almost an endless number of ways to recover. So if you've tried a lot of things before and they haven't succeeded, look for the next thing. I'll borrow a saying actually from AA. Trying the same thing over and over, expecting different results is insanity. Try something else if it's not working. To that end, go to the end of the world. I mean, go online and read, forget the naysayers. Whatever happens to them is not what needs to happen to you. And along with that line, there are abstinence, non-abstinence, medication-assisted therapies, religious and spirituality-based therapies, a whole slew of self-administered and professional-administered behavioral interventions. I offer a course. If you go to ignitedrecovery.com, for instance, and you can spell it IGNTD recovery.com or ignitedrecovery.com. I have an online course, but even before you take your course, I have an hour-long free workshop that you can do immediately. And as I mentioned, there's the abstinenceMyth.com if you want to understand the Ignited system and see what else it can do. But I'll tell you this. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of different people recover in ways that we are told are completely impossible. And what I mean by that is people who use drugs and alcohol wanted to quit the drugs but keep drinking and were successful. People who thought they just wanted to reduce their drinking, started out with that, did it for a little while successfully, but actually decided they would rather eliminate drinking because once they reduced it enough, they realized they don't like its effects. I've seen things that I've been told over and over are impossible happen. And so stop believing what everybody else is telling you is possible for yourself. Go out, find the recovery method that works for you, put this behind you, and get on with the life that you know you can have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to put all your links to everything up on the podcast site so that people can click on that. And of course, we'll put everything through social media, through Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that. So everyone will have a shot at being able to find you and reach out to you if they want to get involved in the program.
Thank you so much, Callie. Thanks for everything you're doing. And I hope we help somebody today.
Thank you. And thanks for coming on. You've been listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you, guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be awake, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. Give me something that's